Before we get into the model of persuasion, I want to take some time to talk about attitude change and what it is in general. When we talk about attitude change and persuasion, we're really getting at the core of the idea of attitudes. So when we talk about persuasion, what we mean is it's a way to change people's attitudes. And when I say attitudes, what I mean is an evaluation of something, positive or negative. Someone's attitude toward something is basically the same thing as whether they like or dislike that thing, whether they think that thing is good or bad. So really, when we talk about persuasion, we're talking about these evaluations. Now, sometimes people want to persuade others in a way that lets them change the behavior. I'm trying to persuade you to do something. I'm trying to persuade you to believe something. But really, all of these processes are pretty similar, and they kind of come back to just general positive or negative reactions to some topic. Now, the thing about attitudes is that it can be about just about anything. And when we talk about attitude change, when we talk about persuasion, it gives us a really wide net in terms of understanding how things change. So attitudes can be about a person. So this guy right here, I could have a positive attitude toward him, which might mean that I like him. I think he's a good leader, for example. I can also have attitudes about a food. So here we have a picture of pizza. Someone might like pizza. Someone might dislike pizza. All that's saying is that one person has a positive attitude, another person has a negative one. Getting into things you might care about for persuasion, people have attitudes toward brands. People might like your brand, they might dislike your brand. You're going to try to change that. They might also then have attitudes toward a particular product. So even if they have a positive attitude toward your brand, they may have a negative attitude toward a particular product that they just happen not to like. And you can also have attitudes about a group, and this is generally thought of as prejudice. So when there's a prejudice against a particular group, it means that people have a negative attitude toward that group. All of these things are just getting at the same underlying idea that we like things or we dislike things, we think things are good, we think things are bad. All that is an attitude. Similarly, you can have attitudes about ideas. So I might try to convince you that recycling is a good idea, and that would mean making you more positive toward that idea. And getting at what I mentioned earlier about behavior, people can have attitudes about behaviors as well. So I might like going to the gym, and we'll see in a second that that has something to do with whether I'm likely to go to the gym. So persuasion is about changing likes and dislikes. People have and develop these likes and dislikes on their own. You, as a person who's persuading someone, you really want to change and influence those likes and dislikes, which can mean a few different things. It could mean gaining support. You want people to support your idea, getting them to agree with your idea, making them think something is good when they used to think it was bad, and vice versa. All of these are just different ways of saying exactly the same thing, that when you are a persuader, your goal is to influence people's likes and dislikes. Now, obviously, this is an important question to ask. Do attitudes matter? Because if you spend all of this time trying to get people to like something or get people to think something is good, does that really do anything for you? Well, it turns out that the reason why we want to affect people's likes and dislikes is because that eventually predicts their behavior. So if we can get someone to think positively of our idea, we then are more likely to have it be the case that they're going to vote on our idea or purchase our product and so forth. So just to show you how these linkages could look, when you have a positive attitude toward pizza, I like pizza, you're more likely to eat pizza. If you support a particular person, you might then be more likely to vote for that person. If you like a particular product, you'll be more likely to buy that product. And if you think environmentalism is good, you will then recycle. So all of these things get at what your goal is as a persuader. Okay, so what you're trying to do is convince people of a good or bad judgment, which then is going to help you because that judgment that your audience eventually has influences their behavior. Okay, so that's kind of the first step toward influencing people's behavior. So let's break it down into the core process here. When you are thinking of your persuasive message, think about it in these really simple terms. What is your message? And your message is either going to be that some topic, issue, idea, person is good, or your message is that topic, idea, or person is bad. Really, when you boil everything down, your message is one of these two versions. And that's going to help you decide how you create your persuasive campaign. So persuasion is about getting people to agree with your message. And the way that happens is classically, according to a lot of persuasion research, is this notion of who says what to whom in what context. This phrase captures all the different variables that can help people agree with your message. Okay, to get people to agree that recycling is good, or get them to agree that your product is good. So let's break this down a little bit. The who is the source, and we'll talk about that in a different section of this course. Who is telling me this message? Who's telling me that recycling is good? So you want to play around with the qualities that your source has to make your message more persuasive. The what is the message itself. So what arguments are you giving people? What are you claiming? What are you trying to use as your reasoning in your message? And how do you think that's going to persuade people? So we'll talk about elements of the message that will be persuasive. To whom is the audience? So you want to make sure you know who you're targeting with your persuasive message, because that can change how you'll deliver it in a way that maximizes persuasion. And the context is the medium. So you want to think about, am I going to be giving this message online, in person, through a TV show, through a commercial that's a video, through a printed advertisement? All of these kinds of things are important to understand because it helps you to know how your strategy should be if you first know what the medium is. Okay, so in this course, we're going to talk about persuasion variables. And these are the individual elements that you can adjust to maximize persuasion. These are things like the source's attractiveness. So we talked about how the source is important. Turns out that more attractive sources tend to be more persuasive, but under only specific circumstances, which we'll get to. You might also tailor the number of arguments you give to people, thinking if I give people more arguments, regardless of how good they are, people will be more persuaded because it looks like I have more reasons. Tailoring the message to your audience, using emotion, all of these things are persuasion variables. They're elements of your message and campaign that can enhance or, in some cases, make you less persuasive. And we'll talk about a ton of these things throughout this course in a way that hopefully you'll be able to wrap your head around. And we're also going to make sure you know how to adjust these variables strategically. It's not enough just to know that sometimes source attractiveness is persuasive. I want to show you when it's going to be most persuasive so that you can be really smart about how you persuade in your campaign. So up next, we're going to talk about one model of persuasion that will organize all of these persuasion variables into a comprehensive model.